Hello everyone from Bruno Pepe. Today I am talking about, what is the Bible? Reply. The word Bible comes from the Latin and Greek words meaning book, a suitable name, since the Bible is a book for all people and for all times. It is a unique book of its kind, without comparison. The Bible consists of 66 books. Books containing laws, such as Leviticus and Deuteronomy, are included, historical books, such as Ezra and Acts, poetic books, such as the Psalms and Ecclesiastes, books of prophecy, such as Isaiah and Revelation, biographies such as Matteo and Giovanni, and epistles, formal letters, such as Titus and Hebrews. The authors. The Bible was written by about 40 different human authors, who wrote over a period of about 1,500 years. The authors were kings, fishermen, priests, government officials, farmers, shepherds and doctors. From all this diversity emerges an incredible unity, with common themes that are intertwined between the various books. The unity of the Bible is due to the fact that it has only one author, God Himself. The Bible is inspired of God, 2nd letter to Timothy 3:16. Human authors wrote exactly what God wanted, and the result was God's perfect and holy word, Psalm 12:6, 2nd letter to Peter 1:21. How the Bible is divided. The Bible is divided into two main parts, the Old and the New Testament. In short, the Old Testament is the story of a nation and the New Testament is the story of a man. The nation was God's way of bringing man, Jesus Christ, into the world. The Old Testament describes the creation and preservation of the nation of Israel. God promised to use Israel to bless the whole world, Genesis 12:2-3. Once the nation of Israel was established, God originated a family within that nation, the family of David, through which the blessing would come, Psalm 89:3-4. Later, David's family promised a man who would bring the promised blessing, Isaiah 11:1-10. The New Testament describes in detail the coming of the promised man. His name was Jesus, and he fulfilled the Old Testament prophecies in living a perfect life, in dying to become the Savior and in rising from the dead. The main character. Jesus is the central character of the Bible, and he is the main character of the whole book. The Old Testament foretells his coming and prepares his entry into the world. The New Testament describes his coming to bring salvation to the sinful world. Jesus is much more than a simple historical figure, he is more than just a man. He is God incarnate, and his coming is the most important event in the history of the world. God himself became man to give us a clear and understandable image of who he is. What is God like? He is like Jesus in that Jesus is God in human form, John 1:14-9. A brief summary. God created man and placed him in a perfect environment, however, man rebelled against God and fell from his original position. God has plots egg the world under a curse because of man's sin, but at the same time God has set in motion a plan to restore humanity and all creation to their original glory. In his plan of redemption, God called Abraham from Babylon to Canaan, around 2000 BC. God promised Abraham, his son Isaac and his grandson Jacob, also called Israel, that he would bless the world through one of their descendants. The family of Israel emigrated from Canaan to Egypt, where they became a great nation. Around 1400 BC God led the descendants of Israel to leave Egypt under the direction of Moses and gave them the promised land, Canaan. Through Moses, God gave the people of Israel the law and made a covenant, a testament, with them. If they would have remained faithful to God and not following the idolatrous customs of the surrounding nations, God would have made them prosper. If, on the other hand, they would abandon God to follow idols, then God would destroy their nation. About 400 years later, during the reigns of David and his son Solomon, Israel was consolidated into a great and powerful kingdom. God promised David to Solomon that one of their descendants would reign as king forever. After Solomon's reign, the nation of Israel split. The 10 northern tribes were called Israel and lasted about 200 years before being judged by God for their idolatry. Assyria conquered Israel and brought its population into captivity in 721 BC. The 2 southern tribes were called Judah and lasted longer, but eventually they too turned their backs on God and the Babylonians took them into captivity around 660 BC. About 70 years later, God in his grace brought back a remnant from captivity to the promised land. Jerusalem, the capital, was rebuilt around 444 BC. And Israel became a nation again. At this point the narrative ends.